Hello, guys. So, today we have a very special guest. So, with his personal experience of studying in Australia and later working there, plus with years of expertise in terms of guiding students to study in various reputed universities in Australia, Mr. Rohith is the ideal person to mentor us. Let us understand the entire process of studying in Australia. What are the nuances? What are the government norms? Latest changes in visa policies, specifically for international from an international student's point of view. So, without any further ado, let's start podcast. Very good morning, Mr. Rohit. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Labhesh. I'm good. How are you?
All good. Thank you so much. I am just looking forward to our conversation. Everything you
Absolutely.
need to know with respect to studying in Australia. I am looking forward, and our audience is really going to enrich with this all this experience and knowledge they'll gain from this.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very enlightening listen to all of your audience because we'll be touching about a lot of information regarding studying in Australia and a little bit about living in Australia as well. And I thank you very much for inviting me here today, Mr. Labhesh.
Our pleasure, sir. Our pleasure. Sir, first of all, for our audience, why don't you go ahead and please introduce yourself and give us your background so that our audience knows you, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, definitely. So my name is Rohith Satheesh, and I am one of the directors, and I specifically handle the marketing at Mancomp Overseas Education, based out of Chennai in India. And we're very proud to say that we are an organization who has a history of over 36 years. We've been in the overseas education consulting space for more than 36 years, since 1988. And to say a little bit about myself, I've studied and lived in Australia for quite a while as well, and I'm very happy to help out students with regards to any queries regarding Australia, how it is to live in the country, what you can expect from the country, what are the different opportunities there. And Mancomp as an organization specializes in Australia because Australia was the first country we decided to promote when we started this overseas education business. So that's a little bit about us, Mr. Lamesh.
So let's start at the very beginning. What exactly makes Australia an attractive destination for studying for higher education?
To answer that question in a sentence, it is definitely the quality of education and the practical exposure you get there, and also the vibrant culture that Australia has to offer. I'm pretty sure you know that Australia is home to the Group of Eight universities, or the G8 as we call it, and they are some of the top 100 universities in the world, and they offer a plethora of courses. The courses are diverse. You have courses for students looking to pursue management, students looking to pursue medicine, students looking to pursue something from the STEM background. So it's a very diverse platter, and that is one of the main reasons why a lot of students look forward to studying in Australia, and they offer a very promising post-study visa opportunity as well. So right now, the post-study visa, when you complete a 2-year master's in Australia, is anywhere between 3 to 5 years, depending on the region you go and study and the university, and most definitely the course they choose as well.
So interestingly, the most important question for specifically for our students who are planning to study abroad is that when they are going to invest a significant amount of money, they
Okay.
really want to understand, apart from the education,
Mhm.
are they in a position to experience the culture, the working environment of that specific country? Primarily also thinking about the concept of ROI, right? Return on investment.
Absolutely.
So can you please throw a bit of light on what is the student visa, the subclass 500, with respect to the Australian student visa category?
Okay. So your student visa subclass 500 is a visa offered by the Department of Home Affairs from the Australian government, which allows you to study in any university or college of your choice, provided you get a confirmation of enrollment from the university. And you need to meet certain financial requirements and certain health requirements as well, which we can talk about a bit later. But if you ask me what the eligibility is, anybody who's looking at it from a UG perspective. So anybody who has completed their plus two or the 12th standard here can go on and pursue their undergraduate degree in Australia. And in looking at it from a PG perspective, students who have completed, their UG here, it can be a 3 year or 4 year. They're not strict like, USA or Canada where you're required to have 16 years of education. They're not very strict about that. So they accept 15 years of education as well. So I think that is another reason why Australia is very attractive. You get to pursue very good quality courses in Australia as well. And if you look
Yeah,
at
that
the
yes.
eligibility, the age eligibility, frankly speaking, there is no eligibility for the student to apply for a student visa. But having been in this industry for a very long time, we've always noted that the success rate of a student visa is higher when the student is below the age of 30 years. I'm not saying that people who are above the age of 30 years can't study in Australia, but the requirements change a bit. It becomes a little more challenging. It's a little more difficult, but it is definitely possible. So we look at such cases on a case-to-case basis, and then we process it. But the ideal age to go and study in Australia is definitely below 30.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, can you please throw a bit of understanding on about how tricky is it to get the Australian student visa? So, as opposed to, let's say, let's compare it to US, right? US ends up having a stringent process of, after documentation, you also need to have interview, and it really, there are so many factors which affects uh, the granting of student visa or F1 visa in US. So, what is the success you have seen with respect to student visas in Australia?
So when it comes to Australia, there have been a lot of changes from the month of May because there has been a lot of student movement into Australia, and there have been some issues that have been going on internally at the government as well. So they have made it quite difficult. But when you compare it to the US visa, I would say that it is still easier because one, it's faceless. You don't have visa interviews. You don't have to submit your biometrics. So that's a big win, if you ask me, because we have students looking to apply to the states where it's difficult to get a slot. Number one, just
Right,
for your biometrics and your interview. So when it comes to Australia, you're saving a lot of time there. But right now, it is a little bit challenging because they have increased the financial requirement. The most key aspect of studying in Australia is having the financial well-being to do it. So right now, they have increased the living costs. They have increased the entry requirements to applying to a visa. You are expected to, your parents, that is your sponsors, are expected to have a certain level of income. You need to submit income tax returns, and every university has a different policy. There's no hard and fast rule. But if you ask me what the basic entry requirement is financially, your sponsors, that is your parents, need to have at least 10 lakhs of income put together, not either individually or put together, and they must have filed their IT return for the last 2 years. And also, another important factor to consider for your student visa is that if you're from the science background, it would be great if you could pursue a course in the science background. It makes it makes getting the visa a lot more easier. So if a science student decides to pursue psychology and he actually has the interest and aptitude for it, sometimes getting the visa might be a little bit tricky. I'm not saying that you won't get it, but it can be a little bit tricky.
now, when you mentioned that the ITR requirement, or the fundamental requirement of the total family income to be around, say, 10 lakhs,
Yeah.
what about the students who are just applying purely based on student loan? So, just having, so there are few families where the family income is less than 10 lakhs, but the entire purpose of education is that the student is bright, and then eventually cater to the requirements, the financial requirements, through education loan. So, does that still suffice the requirement?
See, here's the catch again. Since May, they have made the income tax returns mandatory even for student loans. So, despite the student having a good profile, despite him securing the loan, they want to know the repayment capacity of the parents. Repayment is the key here. So that is why they have made it very mandatory that you have to submit the income tax returns of minimum 10 lakhs put together. But Mr. Labish, we are expecting a change post September. Maybe they will ease on the requirements. So we are all praying that these requirements are eased out so that it'll become more easier for the students and for us as well.
Okay, right. So, right student or the ideal candidate who ends up having a great profile should not be missing out just purely based on the financial requirements.
Absolutely,
That
absolutely. That's what we believe in as well. But again, when the government asks us to enforce such requirements, we have to abide. We don't have a choice, really.
true that. True. Mr. Rohit, can you please give us more information about what exactly is GT
Okay,
with respect to and how uh, why is it that important?
okay. So right now, the GTE, which is genuine temporary income, has been changed to GS, which is genuine student. So a
Okay.
genuine student test or a GST has been introduced. So what the Australian government is looking here is that they are looking for genuine students who want to come to Australia, study, and then later settle down. Sadly, the case is as such, Laveshji, from a lot of countries and especially from India, there have been a lot of students who use this route to get to Australia and they decide to switch their visa and work full time. So they're just using this visa as a gateway to get into Australia because the migration route into Australia, trying to apply for a job visa directly, if you don't have the required skill set, if you don't have the required points, can be a little bit difficult. So what has happened now is that a lot of students have been using this entry to get into Australia. So if your intention is to come and settle down in Australia, come and study, work, and then settle down in Australia, then yes, you have certain boxes to tick off, which is the GS requirement, one being the intention, number two, meeting the financial requirements, number three, alignment of course to career. So what I mentioned earlier, a science stream student pursuing a science stream course, a management stream student pursuing a management stream course. So these are some basic checks of your GST, which is your genuine student.
Right. So does that mean a student within the science community, let's say for that matter, we generally end up getting a decent amount of inquiries, students
Mhm.
who are mechanical engineers or electrical engineers and who want to change their career path from engineering, uh, not say per se just engineering, but from one stream to another, say from electrical to data science. They want to move from mechanical to artificial intelligence. How does that impact your GST requirement?
To an extent, it does, but here's where you can, think you can tip the scales to your favor, as long as you can justify in your SOP as to why you're switching, and you can give proper evidence. It can be something as simple as even if a mechanical engineering student has done a certification course in AI or data analytics, or if they have presented a paper
Right.
in data analytics or business analytics. So as long as you can justify as to why you're making the switch, you're good to go. But otherwise, if it's going to be a drastic jump, for example, from mechanical engineering to psychology, see, the university might give you an offer, but the government won't give you a visa. So you need to convince the government as to why. So again, if the student from the science stream has an aptitude for psychology, they have done a diploma or degree while in their home country, or they have attended certain conferences, gained some experience in psychology, uh, then well and good. But otherwise, if they don't have anything to back their statement, they are going to get a rejection.
Right. Right. So let's take a back step.
Okay.
There are two kinds of requirements, if I've understood this correct.
Yeah.
A, from the university's perspective, first you need to get the offer letter,
Yeah.
and post the offer letter, you end up getting a COE,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the second requirement is to get a GST from the consulate.
So what is happening now is that the government, that is the Department of Home Affairs, are asking the universities to do the GST test straight off the bat at the time you
Oh,
apply. Earlier, yes, GT and GST requirements were there with the university, but they were not very strict about it. So, you know, to filter down or to shorten the funnel, what they've done is right at stage one of applying, they've asked the universities to introduce a very stringent GST text so that they can pick the right students. So it saves a lot of time for the visa officers. I don't have to tell you the flow into Australia. The number of visa applications that are coming in are very many, and it's taking a lot of time to process. So to bring it all into check, even the universities are asked to do a GST or a GP requirement, and they give us a checklist. Universities give us a
right.
checklist, and then we have to tick the boxes, then get the green flag from the university, then get the offer, then the COE, and then you get the visa.
Oh, so GST comes before the COE?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. I would really like you to mellow it down as in ease it out for our students to understand what the exact process is. Say, for that matter, the timeline of applications for Australian students. So there are again two cycles like fall and spring as we have in US, right?
Yeah. So the two major intakes for Australia are Feb and July, and you have a minor intake in November. But that's just
Okay.
a very limited number of courses offered by a limited number of universities. So let's assume that a student who's interested to apply for the Feb 2025 intake, we would want the students to start applying 6 months in advance. So just backtrack 6 months
Okay.
from Feb 2025. The start of that month, they should start applying to the universities. The documents are pretty straightforward and simple, being the scorecards of their 10th, 12th, and their UG, the degree certificates, the front and back of their passport, two letter of recommendations, one from the university and one from their school, IELTS score if they have it, or else they can be submitted at a later point of time. If they have any work experience or documents to support the work experience, then we send it all to the universities. And the universities, certain universities, for example, if you're applying to a Group 8, straight off the bat, the
Hmm.
Group 8 university, even before proceeding, even before collecting the personal documents of the student, they will ask for the ITRs of the family members. So that is going to be the first.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So, and this has been introduced from May. So this change is from May. For example, if I want to apply to University of Melbourne, they won't ask for my scorecard first. They will ask for the income proof. And when it comes to group of 8, they expect you to have at least 15 lakhs income put together. So the requirement goes higher. So once they see that, okay, the parents have sufficient income, even if they're going for self-funding or they're going for educational loan, if they are convinced they have the repayment capacity, then you can proceed. So
So it is just the ITR which matters. You don't check the balance statements or the bank statements.
see, bank statements do come into play, especially when you're going for self-funding. So when you're going for self-funding, they will ask you to submit at least 6 months of balance. I mean, 6 months of your statements.
Right.
Yeah. So once that is done, Lavish ji, once you get the approval from the university that you can go ahead and apply, we apply on the student's behalf, and we wait for at least a good 3 to 4 weeks to get the offer. So once the offer is secured, on the side, what we ask the students to do is let's start preparing or start arranging for your finances, because this is the most critical part of the application, arranging finances. So if it is an educational loan, we ask them to go to private banks or a bank of their choice. We generally ask them to go to private banks because the process is a little more faster when it comes to nationalized banks. So then
Right.
they get the loan approved once they have the offer letter submitted to the bank, and then we get to the payment, which is the disbursement of the first semester tuition fee, overseas health cover cost, uh, and that's about it. You pay that amount to the university, you get your confirmation of enrollment, and then you need to do your health checkup. So we create a HAP ID for that, through the immigration account, and the government has very specific healthcare providers who they would like you to go to get your test done. You get that done on the side while you submit the visa documents on the side. Those test results don't come to us because it's confidential. It goes directly to the migration department, and then they all put it all together. And if they feel that the student, checks off all the boxes, a visa is granted. So when it comes to granting time, you would tell the student that wait for at least 4 to 8 weeks. See, there have been instances we've got the visa in a week's time, or 3 days, or even 5 days. But to be on the safer side, you never know. So we tell the students that it's going to take at least 4 to 8 weeks. But to be honest with you, for us, for our organization, we have got visa. It's never gone more than 45 days for us. You got it in one day and you got it in 45 days, but never a day over 45 days.
Yeah, it primarily depends on all the documentations and the way you arrange
Correct.
those things for the department, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That plays a key role as well.
Excellent. Mr. Rohit, how, so which month would you call as the last month to apply for July intake?
Okay, if you're looking at July 2025, at least, by April.
Okay, so technically, our freshers who graduate in the month of June or July should not or will not be eligible to apply for the July intake,
They will
right?
be eligible, but they will be offered a conditional offer. The condition being the final semester scorecard to be submitted or the degree certificate to be submitted. Some universities are flexible that way. They give you an admit by looking at your current CGPA. And once you get to Australia, you can submit your final semester scorecard or your degree certificate.
So generally, all our students who are graduating, let's say their 12th standard, they would be getting their results in the month of June or July. IB results
It
take a
takes
bit more
time.
time,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So,
So for IB
so
students,
uh,
generally we have seen a trend where they actually wait it out for the next 6 months and they don't really apply for July 2025 and they end up applying for the Feb 2025. I mean, for
Feb.
example, I will give you a real case scenario. We have students from the CBSE stream who are wanting to study in Australia. They have got their results probably 2 or 3 weeks back. They are
Right.
not going for the July 2024 intake. They're all going for the Feb 2024 intake. But what we did is we secured them a conditional offer and we have deferred it to Feb 2025.
To
Yeah.
Feb.
So we have got them a provisional acceptance. That is a conditional offer based on their 11th and 10th and 11th score and the predicted grades. The predicted grades for grade 12. And based on that, we have got them an offer so that that they get that breather or they're confident, okay, I have a provisional admit from so and so
Absolutely.
university. This is what we usually do.
This is quite interesting as opposed to all other countries, right? Most of the countries, they get the students in fall intake itself. Now, if I were to compare the Australian education system with North American education system, is there any provision of graduating early? Is there a possibility of taking more subjects and graduating
Yes,
early?
you can. It's called an advanced standing. So what happens here is that when it comes to the Australian education framework or the Australian education system, let's say that you're doing 5 units in a semester, uh, and you score an advanced standing, that is your HD or a high distinction. So your HDs are 8 and above. You score an 8 and above in at least 3 out of 5 subjects, you get a waiver in your next semester. So that is one way of completing your degree quicker. Or if again you have a good CGPA, you can also take on additional units and complete your degree quicker. But when it comes to Australia, we ask our students not to do it because when it comes to the issue of their post-study visa, they must have completed 2 years of study on Australian soil to be eligible for the post-study visa. So we have never seen such a case like, in North America where you can fast track the degree. Here, generally, students don't prefer it, and we advise students not to go for it as well.
Agreed. Probably for undergrad it would make sense, but for postgrad it absolutely doesn't make sense,
Absolutely,
right?
you're right. Yeah,
Great. So let's understand the
okay.
costing. How would you, in generic category, what would be the costing? A for visa fees. Also, what, give me a rough idea in terms of say G8 universities. What is the fees like for undergrad
Okay,
and
okay.
postgrad?
Let's start off with the visa fee. The visa fee right now is around 720 Australian dollars. That's also gone up. About, it was between 600 and 650, but they've increased it in the last month. It's at $720. The living cost which students need to show is $29,700 for a year. So this is where we face a challenge, Lavesh ji. One being when you convey such a large figure to the student and the parent, the question that arises first from the parent: Oh, is Australia so expensive to live in? So to answer you simply here, this is the requirement that is set by the Australian government, and this is what it costs for a local Australian student to live in Australia. But when it comes to Indian student and having lived there for quite a while, it actually costs you only half, because Indian students don't stay individually, they stay as a group, they cook as a group, they take public transportation, they don't, or their social life or their nightlife is very limited. They're very street smart, they know how to save money, so it actually costs you half. But the government requirement asks you to show this fund. So as show money, you have to show 29,700 Australian dollars for a year. And if you are looking at the fees of G8 Australian universities, I would say that it is anywhere between 50,000 to 65,000 Australian dollars a year. If you're looking at, let's say, Tier B universities, it's going to be between around anywhere between 27 to $40,000. So I hope this answers your question.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It really gives a picture for the audience to understand what exactly that are they expecting. If they plan to apply to Australia, or even if to keep that in your horizon, you need to be aware of what kind of financial it's supposed to
Definitely.
cost you. So, thank you so much for that answer, Mr. Rohit. I just wanted to understand now, when we are uh, showing the funds for of 29,700 Australian dollars for the living cost. How long are we supposed to park those funds, or are we supposed to block it in any Australian
Okay.
bank?
Okay.
What's the process?
So if you are going for self-funding, you're not going to go for an education loan, you're going to use your personal funds, then this fund needs to be at least 3 months old. So it should have been in your father's bank account or your mother's bank account, mixed together. The entire amount can be in one account, or it can be, in three different accounts. It can be
Split
split in three
across.
different accounts, or it can be a very old fixed deposit or a very old term deposit, or you can also even show your parents' public provident fund. Yeah. So if that is the case,
No.
3 months. It must be a 3 month old fund. If you're going for a loan, then they don't really ask for a fund age. And you just need to have it in your bank account. Unlike Canada, where you have your GIC, you don't have to deposit it into an Australian bank account. It can be in your local Indian bank account.
So, if I were to understand this properly, all the costs are supposed to be borne in Indian accounts only, or rather saved in Indian accounts only. You just have to pay the respective fees as and when it's
Correct.
expected, and obviously
Correct.
the living
Correct.
cost. There is no parking of funds in
No,
any
no, no,
Australian
no.
bank,
It's
right?
not there.
This is this makes it so easier. This makes it so easier for the parents to actually. It eases out,
Correct.
right? Great. Uh, I so Now, now that we have spoken about the finances, what kind of experience are students expected to get in Australia? Say, Are they allowed to work while they are
Yes, they
studying?
are.
What is the
Yes, they
allowance
are.
for that?
This is another major attraction of Australia because you are allowed to work 24 hours a week. Uh, you're allowed to work 24 hours a week during your study period. For example, your uni period, it's your first semester is anywhere between July to November. So in that time, in a given university semester, you are allowed to work 24 hours a week. Number one, during your vacation time, for example, your Christmas holidays from November, which goes on up to end of Jan, you are allowed to work full time. So there is no hour restriction. You can work unlimited hours. And Mr. Lavish, as on date, Australia has the highest part-time wage rate than any other country. So this is another reason why you have a lot of students wanting to study in Australia. So you have a minimum guaranteed pay, and if you are paid below that, you can actually sue the organization you're working for. They are very strict when it comes to pay, and most of the Indian students they are able to manage their living cost by doing this part time. And what they do, if they have a 3 month vacation, that is from about December to end of Jan or end of Feb. It's usually till end of Feb because Feb end is when the next semester starts or March first week. Students work full time for 2 months, earn a lot of money, and they come back for 1 month vacation. And this money which they earn in 2 months, it will help them to pay a part of their student loan, or they can pay even a semester fee. So the wage rate is anywhere between $20 an hour to up to $45 to $50 an hour. $45 to $50 an hour, it is going to be a little bit of a training job. Most of the jobs are blue collar jobs. For example, some of the part-time jobs you get there, you can work at supermarkets, you can work different jobs you get in supermarkets. You can be a supermarket checkout boy, or you can be a loader and unloader, or you can be a stock manager where you get the stocks in the supermarket. You can also work in a fuel station, and if you're doing a nighttime job, you get double pay. You can work at fast food joints like KFC, Domino's. You can do delivery jobs if you want to make food there, like Uber Eats. So the options are very many. I don't think there is any other country like Australia which offers a plethora of part-time job options. You can also become a part-time tutor as well. You can become a babysitter. The options are very many, Ramesh.
That's so interesting. It eases out the burden on families,
Absolutely,
right? And the most
absolutely.
importantly, students take their own
Correct,
responsibility.
correct.
That's awesome. Mr. Rohit, can you please help us understand about the health covers, the overseas
Yeah.
student health
So
cover?
you have something called the OSHC or the Overseas Health Cover, which is a mandatory visa requirement. So if you don't have an OSHC, you won't get a visa. So while at the time you make the tuition fee deposit, you are supposed to pay the OSHC as well. So you have different service providers. You have Bupa, you have AHM, you have Medibank. Uh, it starts anywhere between 1,500 to $2,000. Yeah, for 2 years, because your overseas health cover is usually given for the tenure of your visa. So if it's a 2 year visa, they give it to you for 2 years. And if you look at the cover, it is going to be 50%. For example, if you go to a general practitioner in Australia and you end up paying $100, you will get back $50. So 50% coverage, you don't have 100% coverage, you only get 50% of coverage. And you don't get, there are certain downsides to these to this visa. You don't get a dental cover, you don't get cover for your eyes. Yeah, so these two, it's not there. You will have to pay out of your pocket. So this is what it is when it comes to your OSHC. But once you complete your visa tenure and you go on to your post study, then you can choose a visa cover of your. I mean, you can choose insurance cover of your choice, and you can choose to cover your eyes or dental because dental and eyes are very expensive. I mean, if you use these the facilities of these practitioners is very expensive, but it is a mandatory requirement for students. It's going to be 50%.
I believe that with respect to all other countries, the health covers, the basic health covers, so the student health covers don't really cover the dental and as they call it cosmetics part, cosmetics health. Right? So that's pretty much
Yeah,
standard all across. Right? Okay. Uh, they have you have strategically covered the majors. You have strategically you covered the university expenses, student work also. Now, how exactly how tricky it is for international students to land up a job, a full-time job in Australia? Now, obviously, it depends on the fields. I would really like to understand what has your experience
okay,
been in
okay.
this segment.
So my experience in the work domain in Australia has been very interesting. And if you ask me, it was a very pleasurable experience for me. So finding a job in Australia, to be very honest with you, it is not a bed of roses. It's not a cakewalk, but you have a lot of opportunities around you which you need to encash. We overseas education consultants, we call Australia the land of opportunities. So if you want to land up a job, the first thing what we would advise students to look at is look at the skill shortage list or the SSL in Australia. Like every country, Mr. Lavish, Australia has skill shortages as well. So if you decide to do a course which is linked to the skill shortage list, for example, there is a huge demand for teachers in Australia. They are very short on teachers. And if you decide to do a course in teaching, it is going to be more easier to land up a job in Australia. But let's say that you're not really looking at the skill shortage list, and then what you do is you try for a job having the skills. They already have the required PhD with the required skills. Set. It is going to be slightly difficult for you to get your job. But one good thing about Australia is now they're giving you a 3 year post-study visa. So this 3 years is going to be a full period of time for you to find a job. And during that time, you can convert your current part-time job into a full-time job while you're searching for a white-collar job in your future. So you don't have to be worried about not having money to meet your expenses or not having money to build your savings while you search for a white-collar job. And the job application process
Right.
is actually quite long. Unlike India, where you have placement drives, where companies come and recruit you, you do not have placement drives in Australia. Recruiters will come, they will tell you, we are hiring, these are the roles we are hiring for, these are the entry requirements, this is the application link. Bus, done. You get onto that site, you upload all the documents, and a lot of filtration happens in the application stage because if you don't submit clear documents, gone. If you don't give clear, concise answers, gone. You commit grammatical errors in your application, gone. A lot of filtration. I've applied for a government job in Australia. Yes, you are allowed a certain percentage of jobs are reserved for international students. I'll tell you my experience. I applied for a job at the Department of Health where there were 50,000 applications and almost 25,000 students were filtered in the application stage. Then I had several rounds of interview and I was very lucky to be in the last eight. And I was the only Indian in the mix. And I did not get the job because they ended up hiring someone from Africa. But I had another white collar job which I was already doing, but this had better pay and better opportunity. So that is why I had applied to it. But I knew that my chances were pretty slim because the success rate is pretty low. But from a mix of 50,000, I was very happy that I was able to make it to the last eight. So the application process is long, the waiting time is long, but you're allowed to put in multiple applications. So there is definitely opportunity in Australia. Australia is a very aging, has a very aging population. They need youngsters. So if you are in, see now it is a very golden period for Australia. I mean, they are offering 3 years and 5 years and even 6 years of post study if your job is in the, or if your degree is related to the skill shortage list. So that is the first thing we do when a student walks into our office. We will see that if the degree the student wanting to do, is there a job which leads to that where there is a skill shortage. Then we recommend that, and if the student is game, we apply. So 99% of the time it is like that, how we take Australian applications. But work culture, yes, if it's 10 to 5, it's 10 to 5. Not even a minute over that. Even if you work a minute over that, you get extra time. And they take their holidays very seriously. Monday to Friday, they work like crazy. Friday evening, when the clock strikes 5, that's it. No business, no work. Very unlike India, where even Saturday and Sundays are not really holidays for people working in the corporate sector here. So I have experienced great work-life balance. I enjoyed living and working in Australia because you have work-life balance there. No one is going to disturb you on a Saturday or a Sunday. If it is anything, they will only get back to you during working hours. So I really enjoyed that. The people are very friendly. Uh, Australia has a very vibrant culture. You have a lot of beautiful places to visit, a lot of adventure. I have never faced any sort of racial discrimination. I know when some parents do come into our office, due to certain incidents in the past, the first question they ask us is there racial discrimination in Australia? Frankly speaking, there is no racial discrimination in Australia. You are welcomed with both hands. But one advice which I give to students going to any country, always remember that you are not on home turf. If you are in India and if we have a problem, we have 100 people to help us. The law is in our favor. But when you set foot in a foreign country, you must always have it in mind that you need to be careful about the surroundings. You need to be careful about what you speak, how you behave in a public setting. So this is some general advice which we usually give to students. But it's a great place to be, Mr. Labesh. Vibrant culture, great pay, land of opportunities indeed, no doubt.
Our users would be so grateful for the fact that you have really shared your personal experience. You know what? These experiences really count in terms of connecting, understanding the entire ecosystem in a much broader sense.
No
Thank you so
problem,
much
sir.
for that, Mr. Rohit. Uh, I do have a couple of questions in line to what we discussed so far. Can you please elaborate a bit, tidy bit, probably in brief, about the temporary graduate visa? Is that what you meant
Absolutely.
by post-study
So the
permit?
temporary graduate visa or the post-study visa is given to you once you complete. Okay, let's take the scenario of a student completing their masters. They need to do a uh, two-year master's degree in Australia,
Masters. Right.
and the university, almost 99% of the universities have something called a CRICO score. So this must be a recognized degree by the Australian government. So once you complete that, you are eligible to apply for your PSW or your post-study visa. So this post-study visa right now is for 3 years. But as I said earlier, they are issuing it for 5 years and 6 years if they feel that your skill or you, uh, you have completed is linked to a skill which is in demand, or if you decide to study in a regional area. There are certain areas in Australia which are marked as regional territory. So regional territory is not very city like, it is little bit like the outbacks. um, it's like a town. You don't have a lot of huge tall buildings, but it's a small town where there are a lot of opportunities are there. So to attract students to such places, they offer extended post-study visa rights. So during that time, you're allowed to do your, you're allowed to convert your part-time into your full-time, and you can apply for jobs which you're interested, which is related to, for example, if I'm an MBA marketing graduate and I've been working at a gas station for my part-time, I can convert that into my full-time by submitting this visa, and then I can apply to other jobs and wait for it. So this is how a PSW works. So once that is done, let's say you do 2 to 3 years, you end up landing a job, then you can apply for your permanent residency. So how a permanent residency is applied is you need to meet certain points. Just like Canada, it's also a point-based system. Again, preference is given to skills that are in demand. You can apply for your permanent residency, and then you can wait to hear back from the government. But the last 2 years, I'll be very frank with you, the Australian government has taken the initiative to invite students, whether you have the points or not. This has happened in the last 2 years. There is a good demand for international students, and that too Indian students, because they've had a lot of Chinese disinvestment happen in Australia due to certain differences between both the countries. So their number one student population used to be students from China. Now it has changed. Now it is students from India, from the Indian subcontinent. So basically, students from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal. So right now, they are the number one revenue bringer. And when it comes to Australia, the money brought in by international students, it is the second largest source of income. Number one being mining. So I hope this makes students understand why that they are welcoming a lot of students into Australia because they need the money. But I'll be very frank with you, this industry is a roller coaster ride. When one country is on top, another country comes down. And when the country on the bottom goes up, the country on the top comes down. So right now, Australia, it is a golden period, at least for the next 2 years. But after 2 years, it is going to be quite unpredictable. But if you are in Australia in the next 2 years, I am very confident that you can make use of the opportunities in Australia and set a good career for yourself.
That's that's super. We're really thankful for that. Mr. Rohit, can you please answer one more specific
Yeah.
uh, query? So, for the students who are
Yeah.
in high school right now, or students who are
Okay.
currently pursuing their engineering or
Okay.
completing their bachelor's, what would you advise them, a generic advice in terms of how can they work on their profile to make sure that
Okay.
they get into say G8 universities, and how can they start
Okay.
managing their finances from now?
So, as you're aware that, let's take a scenario of a student who's in their grade 12, and they are aspiring to study at a group of 8 university. First thing is the entry requirement, that is the academic entry requirement of a G8 university is the highest. They expect students to have, for example, let's assume I'll give you a real life scenario right now. We have 5 students who want to apply to University of Melbourne, and University of Melbourne ranks number 13 in the world, and they're all from the same school, and they all want to apply to Bachelors of Computer Science for 48 months, specializing in artificial intelligence. The entry requirement of University of Melbourne, the academic entry requirement is they are expected to have 90%. So 90% overall or in their core subjects, be it physics, chemistry, and maths. So what I would advise students to do is that right from grade 10, once you decide your stream, you either get into commerce or you get into science. From grade 10, we give students awareness about Group 8 universities in Australia right from grade 10 because they need a good amount of preparation time. One, the academic requirement. Two, the finances. We make it a point to have parents while we present because we really don't know how good it would be to talk about financial information to students because it's quite sensitive information, right?
Right.
So we would
Right.
want the parents to be there,
True.
and
True.
parents are always there. We tell them about the cost involved, and we tell them to have a certain set amount of income tax return. So still you have 2 years to prepare. I mean, 11 and 12. I mean, when we're talking in 10th grade, we usually go end of 10th grade just before these model board examinations start. So you still have, if you're filing less ITR, the parents can be prepared. They can file more ITR the next 2 years, so that it makes them eligible to
Right.
apply to such group of eight universities. And another advice would be is that it is
It is.
always good to aim high, but always have a couple of fallback options as well. Because the competition to get into these universities are quite high. When you want to study in a premium institution, you will be competing with other premium students, not only from Australia, but from different parts of the world. So the competition will definitely be high. So what we do when it comes to students who are wanting to apply to group of eight universities, we ask them to apply to, I mean, we will apply for them on their behalf to four group of eight universities and four tier B universities as well. So your tier B universities are the universities which rank between 100 and 250, or even sometimes 300 as well, just as a fallback, so that they don't feel dejected that they did not get an opportunity. And definitely having all the documents required in the right order, in the right way the university wants, all this will lead to a very successful application.
Great. Uh, Mr. Rohit, does the profile also include your previous years, like your grade 10 score, your grade
I
11
mean,
score? These scores also
the
matter for your
ultimate
application?
score they would look at is definitely would be grade 12. But let's say that you have not completed grade 12, and then you're looking for a provisional admit, or you're looking for a conditional offer. Then your 11th and 10th, they
Conditional.
will look at it very seriously. Otherwise, if you've completed your grade 12, they will look only at that. So what they're looking for, Mr. Labish, they're looking for consistency in performance. So we have had cases where the student has scored around 95% in 10th and has dropped to 60% in 11th, and then back to 80-90% in 12th. That is actually, it's very sad to say, for them it is a big red flag. So they look for consistency in performance. So that is why they look at 10th and 11th.
Generically, we have also seen, right? 11th,
Absolutely,
11th is taken too lightly,
absolutely.
specifically from JEE aspirants. Great. Mr. Rohit, this has been so enriching. I'm so thankful
It was
that
a
you could
pleasure. It
take
was
out your time,
definitely a pleasure to
oblige to our
answer all
request.
your questions, and I really hope that this podcast really benefits students who are wanting to apply for school.
Certainly, we are really looking forward to all the questions and queries they have through this podcast in the comment section. We'll actively
Awesome.
monitor that and pass it on to you. Uh, I'm really thankful for your time Sunday morning. We wish you all the luck and looking forward to couple of
Absolutely,
more such
absolutely,
sessions
definitely.
going
Look forward to the
in coming time.
same as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Lavish. It was a real pleasure being a part of this session. Thank you so much.